Right.
You ready?
Pretty sure we're on. Yeah.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the February 16th meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. As chair of the Barrington Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the Emergency Order, this is to confirm that we are utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through Microsoft Teams, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by dialing 603-664-0240 and the conference ID to this meeting. We'll do a roll call vote. I am James Jennison. I am here. Jeff Brand.
Present.
Steve Diamond.
Present. Sorry I was late.
Andy Knapp.
Present.
Ron Allard.
Allard present.
We are missing Donna Masucci, and we also have in attendance town planner Marcia Gassis, and this esteemed Connor is here as well. Thank you. We have a small board tonight, but we don't have much on it. We'll jump right to you on the extension and get that out of the way. We'll do the minutes at the end.
Awesome. So the town hall project is requesting an extension. As you are likely aware, the larger subdivision is still awaiting state permits. And so without the town hall lot being created, there's not much we can do on it. So I'm happy. That's probably all the information that you need, I guess, for your consideration here. But as members of the public, if you're interested in any additional details of where we're at, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll just note that we've already extended the other application approval that we had for the rest of the development. So,
yeah,
I just want to note that the request is for 1 year, just to be safe.
Yep. Do we have any indication that it'll be less than that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, hopefully, the larger subdivision still does not have their DOT permit yet. It's in final review stages. As you know, the changing of the plans from 2 driveways to 1 restarted the review process. And while some things are similar, some things are different because now all of that residential traffic will be one entrance. And so I think the specific thing they're looking at right now is how long the turn lanes are, and if the length that was previously agreed upon is now long enough given the additional traffic. And so, yeah, that's definitely still at least a few weeks out. And then the alteration of terrain permit can't be submitted until after that. The alteration of terrain is really interesting right now because there's an incredible state backlog, and I don't know how much applicants that have been before you or approved projects have touched on it, but it's the root of the problem is actually fish and game, and there's likely going to be some political interference, as I understand from the governor, to try to get some assistance in fish and game for the processing. And it was started by a Supreme Court decision a year and a half, 2 years ago that required, instead of just suggesting, as how it was interpreted before, as I understand, that fish and game weigh in on alteration of terrain, it's now required, and you can't proceed through the process without fish and game doing an evaluation. And so fish and game, as I understand it, wasn't set up to handle that workload. And right now there's one person at Fish and Game, one woman at Fish and Game that's doing this. And somebody told me the other day that there's a 75 application backlog just at Fish and Game right now for the alteration of terrain. And that doesn't even include what the Department of Environmental Services has for a backlog of alteration of terrain. So the long story short of that is I don't have high hopes that the alteration of terrain permit will be quick. So if I had to guess, I don't think that the permits will be in place for the larger subdivision until June or July, I think is a conservative estimate. Maybe things will start going faster if there's political interference and the, Fish and Game gets the assistance that they need and work through the backlog. But that's kind of the best information I have right now, but certainly a non-committed answer.
All right.
So is the nature of the concern around the larger number of vehicles lining up that they might get in the way of access to the town hall, or what is the DOT's concern as you understand it in that situation?
Yeah, no, as I understand, it has nothing to do with the town hall. It just has to do with the larger subdivision. As I understand, they're less concerned with the with what happens once folks are in the subdivision. It's getting in and getting out. And so, as it was explained to me, the residential traffic is very low count, very low impact, and commercial traffic is a little bit higher. So, or can be higher. It depends on obviously the case. So they're not the numbers for the single entrance opposed to the two entrances aren't dramatically different, because the only thing that came over was additional residential traffic. There's no additional commercial traffic. The commercial traffic they already calculated was in the original calculations for this entrance. And so I don't think that the numbers are that much higher, but because they are higher, the Department of Transportation wants to make sure that, like I said, the turn lanes are long enough. So no, as I understand it, nothing to do with the town hall or the other commercial lot taking entrance off that spot, but just the numbers as a whole. So District 6, and I've learned a lot about this review process, but District 6 does their review and then sends it to Concord if things are larger projects or they'd like a second opinion. And so this project is specifically in Concord right now. They sometimes send it to highway design or traffic engineering at the state. And so that's who's reviewing it right now. And as I understand it, specifically for the turn lane length.
So it's not any kind of problem though for you if the DOT will say we need it to be this long, so you have to pave this much space. I mean, there's room for it, right? I'm not remembering exactly how it looked right now.
Yeah, so Mr. Diamond, we're talking in 125, and so it won't impact the town hall project. Well, I can't think of a way how it impact the town hall project. So the town hall will be taking access off Signature Drive, which is that one entrance into the subdivision. So if the Department of Transportation recommends that the developer for the larger subdivision extend the turn lane, then the developer's traffic engineer would have to comply with that recommendation or consider an alternative that's satisfactory to the Department of Transportation. So really wholly separate than the town hall project. I have information about it because the progress of our project depends on the larger subdivision. So I'm talking about them at the same time, but two separate situations.
All right. Are you good, Steve?
Well, does anyone else remember anything that would be in the way of what would be the remedy for the DOT, whatever their concern is?
I remember looking at the print. I think there's sufficient space, land area, distance that if they had to extend the turn lane, that wouldn't be a problem. I don't recall anything being a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to wetlands in that area. I know there's some up close to the road, towards town more, but they're going to have to find a workaround for whatever reason that, if that comes up, so it's unfortunate, because I know that some people are getting antsy and don't understand the reasons behind it. But it is what it is, from a out of our hands perspective, for sure.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, to that point, I think it's, the select board made a decision when they were approached by the developer a couple of years ago. The developer as I understand it, wasn't as interested in the commercial lots as the residential lots, and an opportunity to have a piece of municipal infrastructure as an entrance lot was more beneficial to the developer than having, any different commercial lot. And so he was very transparent with the town about the value add for him for giving away this lot. And obviously the value add for the town is that you have an undeveloped virgin piece of land that will be cheaper to develop than previously developed lots that were available to the town for a town hall such as Ramsdale or otherwise. And so the value add for the town is, we're acquiring this, lot potentially worth $60,000 or $70,000 for free. And so that was all transparent at the time. I think we're a little farther removed from the decision making. So I think folks, forget that wasn't a deal made behind closed doors. That was in select board meetings. It was talked about at planning board meetings and otherwise. And so the select board, when they agreed that was a path worth considering, understood that there would be some risk, and you have to be willing to accept some reasonable risk when you're making decisions and planning for the future. And so we're certainly realizing some of that risk now, and part of the risk was delays. The project isn't approved, the land can't be immediately transferred to the town, and so we've experienced that delay, and it's unfortunate, and I wouldn't say that it's anybody's fault, and certainly folks are correct in that, it'd be nice if this project were underway or completed by now. But there are external factors, and everybody's doing the best they can. And I think from my perspective, every step of the way, folks have been making decisions that are in the town's best interest at the time. And so I just hope folks will keep that in mind. And if you have questions, the updated information about the town hall is at barrington.nh.gov/town hall. So there's a full listing, every date, every decision, links to videos, links to minutes, links to these minutes in video will be up there after they're completed. So if anybody has questions, there's a perfect chronological accounting of what has happened. Sorry for taking up a little bit of the board's time, but I think because the point you mentioned about folks in the community getting antsy, I think it's valuable to share that information.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Well, with that being said, I do see we have one guest, so I'll open up public comment just in case we have interested parties that would like to weigh in. And you can unmute your microphone if you have a question or comment that you'd like to make by clicking the unmute. And if you're on your phone, it's *6. Hearing no comments, I'll close public comment. If the board has no more questions,
I'll make a motion to approve a 1-year extension for application 223-26 lot C1-RC-SDAQ-20 as amended.
I will second the motion. Motion by Jeff Brand, seconded by James Jennison. Ron Allard.
By the way, just before we do, Andy, did you recuse yourself already?
No, if it came through, I was just gonna, if he called for a vote and asked me, I would just remind everyone that I am recused from this since I am part of the select board, who is technically part of the applicant in this case.
Yep. Okay.
Allard, aye.
Andy Knapp, recused. Steve Diamond.
Diamond, aye.
Jeff Brand.
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. The 1-year extension is granted.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And
I would love to hear the second part, or maybe we're getting to that, about how things are looking time-wise for the town hall. Is this the right time?
we have to, I believe we have a request to amend the site review for a larger square foot building. Is that correct?
Why do we need to approve this again?
What's that?
To increase the footprint. We already approved that.
Oh, maybe it's just the way it's written.
Yeah, it's the way Barbara writes it.
Okay.
We approved it at the August 18th meeting.
Thank you for having a better memory than mine. I just assumed it might have been a couple square feet more and they needed it again. So
I wasn't totally sure, so I did go back and look it up. I thought we had approved it. So I went back and checked the August 18th minutes. And in fact, I even have them up on my screen, and I see the 5 pages of discussion, as well as the notice of decision revised. And it says a motion was made by Jay Brand, seconded by R. Allard, to approve the amended site plan for the town hall. Vote 5-0.
good. All right. That settles that. Steve, you had a question?
Well, I was just interested in the second part of what Connor was talking about on how things are looking timing wise for the town hall.
Yeah, I mean, so just to summarize, I guess hit the bullet points of what I was just talking about. I think conservatively, the larger subdivision will receive permit approval in June or July. I think that's a little bit best case scenario, but it could go either way, as we've seen in the delays. The town hall project specifically is the plans are on the shelf. The alteration of terrain for the town hall lot specifically is in place. The wetland permits are in place. Septic design's done. So we're ready to get in the ground. The actual construction phase will depend in part on the original or the access road being opened up, which the developer will be doing. But my last conversation with the developer is that, as soon as this project is approved, he intends to get in there as quickly as possible. He has contractors in place. So I'd like to say, to speculate, dust off my crystal ball, I'd like to say that construction activities would start in the town hall sometime in July or August. But that's, there's a lot of contributing factors that may move that either direction. If it's moved, hopefully sooner. But I think it's just as reasonable that it could be a later start date than that. Hope that answers your question.
So is there anything that is conditional about that developer's commitment to make the road at least far enough for the town hall, or is that a definite?
Not sure I understand your question. So the developer, the larger subdivision creates, the 58 residential lots in the back, and I understand the developer's business interest in achieving that subdivision to develop and sell those lots. So that, I think, is the developer's interest in this arrangement, and the town's interest is to construct a town hall. So I think in a small sense, the interests overlap, and that's what brought us together.
I guess sorry, just to finish up, are we waiting potentially for the road to service the town hall on residential lots selling first, or is this going to happen this year pretty definitely?
So specifically, once the subdivision is approved, so the subdivision was conditionally approved by the planning board pending state permits. State permits are pending, in progress, if you will. And once those permits are received and the other conditions of the conditional approval are met, the subdivision will be approved. At that point, the commercial lot, which has been labeled as C1 on the plans, will exist. The process for the town acquiring that lot has already been undertaken. So at that point, as soon as the subdivision's approved, I intend that the developer will deed the lot to the town, as previously agreed. And so then the town will own that lot, and the developer will own the rest of the development. I think you're asking if there's a chance that the developer won't develop the road. So that's your question? So yes, the town hall project takes access onto Signature Drive, which is a road yet to be created, but approved in the subdivision plan, conditionally approved by the planning board. So if Signature Drive is not created, then I think it's actually the planning board's approval of the town hall project, which would not allow us to proceed, because that's a project approved onto a road which depends on another subdivision. So I think the answer to your question is yes, it depends on the subdivision.
I think the simple answer is there is imminent possibility that the developer could go bankrupt. He could decide to table this product. He's got a lot of money invested. It's highly unlikely, but those scenarios do exist. And that's the risk that Connor spoke of earlier. There is that risk. He may otherwise get into another project and have his money tied up and say, I'm not building the road. And then that's certainly an unfortunate event that the select board and the town will have to address that and say, do we spend the money to build the road? That's a whole another can of worms and a different road to go down. But I think it's fairly obvious to say that those possibilities do exist. That's part of the risk, that if this goes till August or October, and who knows what the situation is for both the builder, the developer, construction equipment, prices. I think it would be fair to say that we're all holding our breath, hoping that it's seamless and works out well, considering the obstacles that have faced so far. But there's no guarantees. There's no bond put in place. There's no money set aside to build that road that I'm aware of. I think that would be the only thing that would guarantee a start date if something like that had taken place, and I wasn't aware of anything like that.
I will say, though, as construction in general and development in general in this area is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there just aren't enough lots out there to put homes on them. So
There's not enough. Yeah.
The market would have to take an absolute nosedive.
Yeah.
To have an issue. So,
and prices are so high. He has every reason to get foundations in the ground and start. He can pre-sell 20 of them probably tomorrow if he thought he had a permit in place. So
Thanks
it
for
looks
the
good.
questions.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on that?
that's it.
All right. Well, we'll do the minutes from last meeting, February 2nd. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
Yeah, I got a couple of corrections, very minor corrections.
Okay.
On page 4 of 7, I have I made 2 comments that were recorded. The first one's roughly midway down. It says, ask if this is temporary or permanent. I would think it would flow better if the temporary and the permanent was swapped. Because it says because of COVID, and I'm asking you, is it temporary because of COVID?
Right.
So I think those two should be swapped. Is it permanent or is it temporary because of COVID? And then down my second comment, alcohol is spelled wrong.
What was that?
Second comment at the bottom, alcohol is spelled incorrectly.
Third from the bottom.
Yeah, third from the bottom.
I still didn't understand what he said. Something about alcohol?
It says alcoholic as opposed to alcohol or alcoholic. It's just a typo he was pointing out. And the third line from the bottom, alcohol is spelled incorrectly.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Although we should be concerned about them serving alcoholics.
Yes. We don't want to do that.
Eric,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
Seconded by Jeff Brand, Ron Allard,
Allard, aye.
Andy Knapp,
Aye.
Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Jeff Brand,
Aye.
James Jennison, aye. Minutes approved as corrected. Reports from other committees and unfinished business.
Well, I will say that we and Marcia and Andy can chime in here, but the subcommittee for selecting a new engineering firm is moving forward. There was actually 12 firms that applied, put in a response to the RFQ. We were impressed by the number, went through, we've already had one meeting, and we pared the number down to, is it 4 or 5?
I want to say 4.
I think 4. And so Connor has gone out and been getting statements from the references for those 4 firms. And then he's distributing those comments back, and we're going to have another meeting this week where we're going to discuss what questions we want to ask of the applicants for the interviews, and then we'll be scheduling the interviews.
I was muted there. Yeah, any other unfinished business or comments?
I was just going to echo what Jeff mainly Jeff had said, and what Marcia had added on to, is that the engineering meeting, it's great to see such a response and so many people that were interested in it and bid it, and hopefully we'll end up with a really great choice out of all of it.
Oh. I'm surprised with everybody being so busy in the climate out there that there was an eagerness, but I think that's excellent to hear. For me, I had interest from an outside party to join the planning board, a local business owner. And I don't know, he said he was going to try and join today. I don't know if it's the guest we have here. He's a man named Buddy Hackett. So he's going to be trying to sit in, and I think he's going to get his paperwork to Marcia, and hopefully we'll have another member soon.
I love Buddy Hackett. I didn't know he moved into town.
He's been here for a while, I think since 2000, early 2000s. And so, yeah, I think that's good. I know there's some people that have ready to resign maybe. So give them the ability to, I know Dawn is kind of ready to move on to other things. So she was just waiting for other people to come in. So
how do you know, Buddy?
He owns the Renaissance firearms down the road, and so that's how we ran into each other over at the range over there, and he showed interest. So, yep.
By the way, I went in that place. That place is amazing.
Yeah, beautiful place. Yep, they've done a really nice job.
Hey, speaking of new places or revised places, though, hey, Marcia, I was going to ask, we got, for the next meeting, we got an application for the motorsports over there of the former archery center. The other day I rode by, I'm glad I got the prints, because I rode by and I go, what the hell are they doing? They're building and we haven't gotten an application. But I noticed in perusing the application and the plans, there was the board previously approved an addition to the building. And that's what they're building now?
Yeah, they went through a whole application process when they originally built the building, and this was, vested. They just hadn't constructed it yet. So then they started doing this, and now they want to add on 5,000 square feet of basically cold storage they do like SKUs and stuff like that. So the complete drainage and everything. So you'll be seeing that application. So
well, we got the application. I didn't see one of the questions because I did quickly glancing at the prints. It may be there somewhere, but they're adding a lot of impervious surface to that 2-acre lot. And, I was wondering, so they provided an analysis to show how they're going to handle all that?
Extensive. I was actually, because I spent yesterday, I guess on Sunday and today, going over a lot of it. And yeah, they did a full drainage analysis. It's actually really good soils out there, if you're familiar with the area. And it's, I assume it's on a pad, I believe. I don't know if it's a pad or frost walls or whatever you do with a 5,000 square foot. But there is an extensive drainage analysis, and then you can always have D&K or whoever review that if you want. But because I did read it quite a bit, and one of the things it showed was like basically a lot of it is off drip edge, an infiltration. It's not, there's not a lot, I didn't notice any kind of infiltration other than from drip edge. So, but the soils, I understand, are quite good. So
Yeah.
filtration that way makes a huge difference.
And the other one we got was the one for the Berry project behind the off Christmas Lane, extending that out, which ends in 2 cul-de-sacs. Is that going to be a problem?
Actually, what it is, if you look at it, they extend the road. They call it Christmas Lane, but it isn't Christmas Lane anymore. I had to correct Chris on that. Oh, God. What's the name of it? It's not Christmas Lane. Oh, now it escapes me.
Yeah,
But
whatever it is. Yeah.
whatever it
Community
is.
Way.
Oh, what did you say?
It's Community Way.
Community Way. Community Way. Part of that road will be a private road where they have whatever the condominiums are that they are going to sell, but those are going to be separate from, you can't really tell from what they've provided. It's a true mixed use building with residential on the top 2 floors and commercial on the bottom.
Right. That's on the that's between the Christmas Dove and the condos.
Right.
Off on the north side there, they have that mixed use building.
With the boulevard, like they did going from Route 9 in, so it'll be a boulevard road, so more town centery. So it's hard to tell because it's just design review, so they don't have the details of the road design.
Well, what's the purpose of the other cul-de-sac that goes off to the east there? Because one goes back up where the townhomes, condominiums are going to be, but then it branches off and makes a Y, and then there's another one. Well, anyway, we can talk about this. I was just interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the big piece out back that was supposed to be all those houses.
Right.
You know, the original proposal.
Yeah, the original proposal was what? To put, what was it, 15 to 20 houses out there, right?
23, if memory serves.
Yeah.
And you're going to have the 23, but they're going to be townhouse style. So the 23 units are going there. They're just whatever style they decide for them to be. I'd like to see them with some kind of bedrooms first floor.
I thought they were talking though about putting in single family homes over by the pond there.
This piece of property is not by the pond. It's
Right.
a little farther over, but they had a lot of proposals. This is the proposal they're going with. It's, you know, the parcels that they purchased as part of it. So it'll be interesting to see the mixed use building
Yep.
with the residential on the second floor.
The actually grandfather. I don't remember that. Did that happen during my time?
Nope.
Long time ago. See, you build to a certain portion of the property, you become vested. So they developed a portion of the building. It was. It's been quite a while. It was the original builder of the development.
But Mark, that's my question. If they didn't build it, when we give a approval, you have to do construction within a certain amount of time or it lapses. You have to reapply, right?
A certain percentage. They vested. They did enough to vest themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the conditional, it's always that percentage within.
It's what, 50% or something like that, right?
I don't even think it's that high, is it?
Now you're going to get to see it all over again pretty much anyway, the other part.
Yeah.
By the way, you might want to tell them their drawings are not consistent. On the building, on one page, the man door's on the right, and then another page, it's on the left.
We should be talking about these at the next meeting, but that's good.
We'll move on.
Like,
We'll move on so we have time. We want to talk about master plan zoning and questions for the lawyer. Right?
Yeah, I mean, specifically the last time we talked about getting the lawyer engaged is when we were talking about scattered and premature, which is rather kind of a nebulous term. And I know a couple of things that I was interested in was, first of all, is there any case law that deals with approval or disapprovals based on scattered and premature in New Hampshire? And if so, you know, how do those cases inform us as far as applying this? And
Jeff, can you just refresh me on the scattered and premature piece?
well, it's in state law, and it's also we discussed it before with respect to that 80 unit subdivision that up by the Irving station there, up by your firm.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the questions is scattered and premature, and what that says is that scattered and premature development regional impact, it's just one sentence, so I'll just read it. The board may make certain initial findings that a proposed development is scattered and premature, RSA 674-36-2A, or is a development of regional impact, which may lead to modification of the application, additional public hearings, or could result in denial. So when we started discussing this as part of that 80 unit proposal, you know, it came up, that's not something, at least during my time on the board, that we have ever utilized. And if we were going to utilize it, then that requirement, then how is it to be applied? I'm unclear as to how we apply that. And the other question of the lawyer is that based on what the lawyer sees with respect to any challenges, court cases that have involved this, do we need to develop any additional criteria that we would utilize in applying that particular standard?
Gotcha.
I think there's just two basic questions. Get explanation from the attorney, because I can tell you in most cases when you're going to have something that's scattered and premature is because you don't either the developer is willing to put in necessary infrastructure that's required, and that's why it would be scattered and immature, yeah. Ugh. But anyway, so all I can think of is a development like Berry River Road. You know what I mean? Those types of things. Those would have been considered scattered and premature. Not at the time, but if you were to do them now, you know what I mean? If somebody came in and wanted to develop a Berry River Road now, that I would think would qualify as being kind of scattered and premature. But the planning board, Barrington, what they deal with is we have rules and regulations, and people have to follow the rules and regulations. And if they follow them, it won't be scattered and premature.
Well, that was the conundrum that we were talking about. Steve was asking a question. So we go and approve development, which says the infrastructure is adequate to support in the current time. But then, you extend it out 10 years and it says it may be a problem. But then on the other hand, the infrastructure that's affected isn't something that the town controls. So, you just kind of keep going around in a circle on this thing.
Yeah, and I think scattered and premature has been one of those hot words where nobody just wants to go to court because it's very vague and it's a automatic court battle. If you say scattered and premature, will the lawyer defend you and on what basis? And so I don't think anybody uses it in that regards.
Well, that's why I was interested if there have been any court cases and what they would say, what they have told us and could inform us about utilizing that particular requirement.
And to that, is it a viable tool to use in the town of Barrington based on land use and rules that we have. From her perspective, if it's defensible position.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to add a development on France Road and you're gonna double the traffic on France Road such that it need to be extended, widened or something, which would be problematic. Well, maybe there's a case for that, but as we, discussed during the development up in town and village place, the village center, then, we don't control the infrastructure, so seems to be pretty problematic.
On a state road, but like you said, on France Road, if that were to be the case, Marcia contends that if there's a 80-acre piece out there and someone wants to throw 300 houses out there, it's permittable. So there's no scattered premature.
You'd have to construct to whatever the standards are. You
But
can't.
not France Road and Hall Road and Meeting House Road to get out to Route 4.
I don't know, if there's a way to engineer it, then it can be done. Just because there's more cars does not make it not, and I'm just telling you from doing this for decades,
Right.
You would have to be able to tell somebody, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. In order to get approval, you'd have to build to the standard. If they build to the standard, you have to give them approval. So you can't just make up your own rules along the way because we don't like it. You know what I mean? There's rules that have to be followed within development. That's what you do in Barrington. You follow the rules.
Right, exactly, which is why we have this rule, this requirement in our regulations that talks about scattered and premature. I understand how to apply, monuments and underground utilities. I'm unclear from a legal standpoint, how we apply that particular requirement. And I didn't know if there's anything out there, if any other town has used it, have they been challenged? What's the deal? Maybe there isn't anything. Maybe it's too nebulous for anybody to use, but it is in the state law, so.
Right.
It's like any kind of development. It's like you can't stop it. You can only, people years ago tried to have these moratoriums on building. You couldn't just do that. You had to, if there was a problem because the infrastructure didn't work or there was a problem for some other reason, you had to address it. And you had a certain period of time to address it. And that was the idea to just stop it.
Yeah, I understand that. But specifically, this says that scattered and premature can be used for a denial. I want to know how that happens because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think it's contrary. I think, Marcia, it's exactly the opposite of if the town has created regulations that they all of a sudden realize is a big problem, you can't. It's the one tool to say, no, we can't just let this happen, even though we authorized it. We've got this one tool in our back pocket to stop you so we can fix our regulations. That's
not how, if you meet the regulations, you meet the regulations.
Right.
The problem about it.
Well, I know you have to be careful because you're going to go to court.
You just can't the whole, in most cases when you're talking about something like that, say somebody wants 300 lots and you don't have the infrastructure for that. So then you say, well, we won't approve 300, but this is what the land can hold, and if it meets the regulations.
We're talking beyond their boundaries of their land. That's the scattered and premature part. If they have the lot and they have if those 80 condos, townhouses, whatever you want to call them, were to go at the end of any small road that you don't have the state regulating the traffic on a town road. So nobody we're just going to say, yeah, it's permitted. We got to let them do it.
No, right? That's not, no. If your infrastructure, if your road, just like when remember when we had the gravel pit that was going to come through? We said, this is what you have to do to the road. You have to make all these improvements. This road can't handle what you're asking it. And that was perfectly legal.
Right. Okay. So so you're saying, you know, like I said, my question gets to be, how are we going to apply this particular requirement? You're saying if we state that there has to be an infrastructure improvement and the builder says, I'm not doing that, then we can say, well, then it's scattered and premature. So that's at least one condition under which we could employ that particular requirement. Is that what you're saying, Marcia?
Yep. You have to have a reason. And if
Right. Now, it also says, though, that it could be a development of regional impact. And I guess we went through that with the development up behind Liberty Truck. Didn't that end up being a regional impact?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Or additional public hearings. So, I mean, so there's a little bit of daylight on how we'd employ that. But I guess I was just wondering from a legal standpoint, if the lawyer had any knowledge or advice for us on how that might work or what the pitfalls were.
I actually heard, I think I read about a case with Dartmouth College, what somebody was trying to say that it was scattered and premature. They were doing a big, I don't know, field house or something going on, and it went to court or something. But Dartmouth ended up winning. But
well, in that particular case, yeah, they tried to deny it, but one of the issues was noise. And actually, the contractor had paid for a detailed technical analysis that proved they met the requirement. So the court said, nah, you can't do that.
Andy, I think your recollection is fine. You weren't at the meeting in question where we really laid out the details here about the concerns around traffic. Essentially, we have an out-of-date, but the only comprehensive corridor study on 125 says, I believe it's about 27. There's going to be a failure state, which they call failure level of service, where delays could be 15 minutes or more to get through one intersection of Califf's Corner, which would really undermine both the character of Barrington that a lot of us want, I think, and the value as a bedroom community for people to easily commute to where they need to go. So our responsibility is a tricky one because we're looking at individual lots, but we have a broader responsibility about looking after where we're heading in terms of traffic and coming up with a coherent and consistent way of grappling with that topic. The particular study for this lot we were discussing on the 9 and 125 intersection, its traffic study said about 10 years. Who knows what the effects of COVID will be around how people behave with driving, but if we assume they're going to go back to how things were eventually, then we're heading towards an issue, and we need to grapple with that issue in some way. The way we legally, I mean, legal questions are important, but what we're trying to achieve, we should also think about separately too.
Yep. I mean, I don't disagree.
Well, in my mind, that's how it applies in Barrington. I mean, scattered and premature can mean, you know, the town hasn't got the water and sewer in that area yet, or whatever. For Barrington, you can do a road up to code on your property, but if it connects to a road that's not up to code, it can't handle the traffic. Then that's where I think it applies in Barrington.
yeah.
Well, one of the problems we got, though, is with the state roads in Barrington, is that basically the state's making the call and they decide what the infrastructure upgrades would need to be, which I guess the way we tie into that is say, we conditionally approve a project provided you can get the state to permit this. And then it's up to the state to make those decisions.
And they looked at them extensively, as you've realized. I mean, there are a lot of engineering and review and whatnot that goes into their approvals. And you got to remember, especially in the town center, I mean, what do you want? You want a through road through, you know, everyone going fast, or do you want a town center where, yep, you're going to have to stop? I mean, you can't have it all. And the traffic patterns have changed, and they're going to change every time we put in a couple of lights now. That changed the whole traffic pattern on 9 and 125. You know, things are going to change. They're going to evolve. What was good, 20 20 years ago isn't going to be the same solution now. And there are a lot of, I think, incremental things that have happened in reviews and studies, and DOT's been quite involved in the 9-125 intersection, of late. And so, I mean, especially with the whole idea of the sidewalk project, getting a lot of support from the whole region. So, and at DOT actually, did I tell you this? DOT actually, through the 10-year plan, would fund 100%. So not 80%, they'd pick up 100%. We'd have to wait a few years, but they pick up 100% on that for the sidewalks, because that's how important it is to a town center. And
so in that regard, could we drive the fact that we want like a very slow meandering drive through 9 and 125, but we also would like the exit for the Barrington tunnel that gives you the high speed route through 9?
Yeah, special just for you.
That's what I'm
Come
up to that.
on, right? Come on, Andy. We want to be the Wiscasset of New Hampshire. You know what?
I mean,
There is one in this, Andy. So my dump sticker gets me through this tunnel.
What's that?
My dump sticker gets me through the tunnel, right?
Right.
I mean, there is one instance of scattered and premature where they've used it for highest and best use for a project. And I don't know the applicable nature of that for the town center. If something comes in and wants to do something that we don't think is highest and best use for the town center, as opposed to just saying no because we don't like it, it's.
Yeah, well, if it's in the regulations,
so is scattered and premature, though. That's what I keep going back to. It's in the regulations, and it's in state regulations, which makes it,
That's a different kind of comment, though. I mean, if something's approved in the zoning ordinance is allowed, it would be very difficult to change that from a legal.
Marsha, I'm going the other way. To me, if I got a big development that's connecting to an existing road that only has 2 houses on it, so now my road's up to standard, but I'm connecting to a road that's small and has 2 houses on it, and that has terrible lines of sight or whatever. It's a terrible road. That to me is the way I think it's most likely to apply.
Well, yeah, they would have to improve. You would have to pick what needs to be improved in order to make it approvable, and maybe they couldn't make it approvable at all. But you always have to have a reason. That's I think what I was trying to stress. There has to be a documented reason.
Well, one of the things that it says in that regulation, it talks about something that what does it say? Potential certain initial findings that a proposed development is scattered and premature. I think that you brought it up when this was being discussed the last time. That's something that ought to start early in the project, so that if you did have a road and you say, hey, it wasn't, it's not adequate, you got to upgrade, a mile of road in order to do this development, then we need to do that up front. That's not something that we start hacking away at, after we're having the public hearings on the application. That's something we got to be upfront about.
I think part of the problem that we run into here is that you could have someone who takes a parcel, or say they have a big stretch of land here, and they're like, okay, we want to put in 1 house, and they put in their 1, and then they subdivide that portion of a lot off there, and they're on a class 6 or a private road, and they've got everything set, and it's like, okay, we want to add another one, and it's the what's the term for it, where it's incremental in the way that it happens, so it doesn't create this impact all in one shot. It's I'm going to get this piece now, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to take another bite of the cheese and another bite of the cheese. And because I'm not taking the whole cheese, I don't have to worry about the traps slapping down on my head at this point.
You are protected with this. When you start cutting lots up, you're far more protected than if it was an existing lot.
Right.
And you see that all the time. That's why we get stuck with Berry River Road and Long Shores Drive, because they're existing.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-planning board.
Right. But it's somebody gets in there, makes those lots or gets those lots set up quickly and then just leaves them like that for a while. And then they're like, oh, their lots are record. And now you're saddled with it.
Yeah, but remember that, we've got regulations as far as putting roads in, that if you got a driveway, you can't, have more, you can't have more than 3. If you get to 4, you got to start building things to town standards. So, and we said we do have to tweak that requirement, because it says if you only got 3, you don't. If you get to 4, you do. And so, as we found out a couple of times, they've done what you've talked about, Andy, which is they'll take and they'll say, their access is to more than 3 lots, but they only build 3 houses and say, so we don't have to meet the standard.
Right.
And they get around it. So we need to tweak the regulation to say, if it has access to 4 or more lots, then you're going to have to build it, rather than, whether they actually build that number, if it has access to it. Because we've had 2 or 3 cases where people they're the 4th house or the 4th property to be developed. And we say, you got to bring the road up to standards. And they go, what? And nobody else that's already on the road, they don't want to pay the bill. And you end up with this poor schluck that bought property and now finds out it's going to be another $20,000, $30,000 to upgrade the road to meet the requirement.
And I think Steve probably would love to chime in on this one, because I think about the development that's happened over on the backside of Mendham's here, where every time Steve brings up that they're looking at developing a lot back there, Steve always brings up the road and the size of the road and the width of the road and everything, but it's all pre-existing and they're all prior lots of record.
Yeah.
What I would more urgently bring up is, so as more things get approved in, especially in the town center area, more and more time of the day, traffic will be an issue on 125. And then we're heading towards one of 2 futures. Either it stays as 2 lanes, 125, and it's slow and takes a long time to get through, or gas taxes someday get increased and there's enough money that the state has to do this, and it turns into something more like Plastow. And so neither of those are very appealing scenarios to me. So I'm hoping we can plan on it being something other than that in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. I think having the actual town center roads that are going off now, kind of spreading it, as opposed to if you look, and I had the map up here, but Barrington is notorious, was for the longest time, is developing right along the roadway. And if you looked at some of the imagery, you could tell it's like they have acres and acres of space, open, undeveloped space, but it's all interior. It's not on the edges. So it is on the edges, not in the interior, is all vacant. But a lot of that's gone to conservation now, too. If you think about how many thousands of acres have gone into conservation now, so that won't be developed. So
I think we made, I think we made a very bad decision early on in the process that will not be reversed at this point. Town center shouldn't have been Caleb's Corner. It really shouldn't have. It's a horrible spot to put it. The only outcome for the decisions that are made is that we are going to be Plastow. There's nothing to stop it, really. There's no mechanism in place that I see that will prevent that from happening eventually, other than a very large number of well-off people buying up all the property and developing in such a way that, it's some utopia. It should have been centered around a different part of town, even if it was around the fire station or anywhere off the beaten path would have made more sense. And I think we're also at a point where the people that voted for the town centers type stuff, don't even remember what they voted for, and now they've got a change of opinion and different mindset. And it goes back to the old Barrington charm. You can't get three people in a room to agree on anything, so nothing ever gets done. And
Well, I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I think that the development where you're concentrating businesses and population density out where the major road that goes through the town is probably not a bad place to have it. So that once you get off the beaten path, then the entire rest of the town is more rural and has a rural character. And so I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you've got all the traffic out there anyway. You've got the major commuting routes. And I don't think that the town has necessarily abandoned or changed their minds with respect to town center. When we went through those last public input sessions, and you go back and look at what people had to say, they were fairly supportive of the concept of a concentration of business and population in the town center in the area that we've designated, with the rest of the town, as you go out away from that 125-9 intersection, then it's going to be less populous and more open and more rural. So I don't know. That you're kind of right that that the train's kind of left the station, but I don't necessarily think that the people in town want to necessarily derail it.
No, I don't think that. I'm not saying they want to derail it. I'm just saying that when you tell people, you give them the concept of the town center, they're all for it. And then when you tell them that when you hit the town center of 125, you're going to slow to 25 miles an hour. And if you're on the outskirts and you're commuting to Dover, Rochester, Portsmouth for work, that all of a sudden your commute is no longer a zip down the highway. And that's why you lived a mile off of 125, because you could jump on 125 and shoot down to Portsmouth and shoot down to here to go to work. Now you're going to sit in traffic I think they're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that when I raised my hand to vote for this town center. I really wish we would have put it just a little bit over here so I could still zip through and then hit town on my way home.
Well,
Yeah, you're still not to zip through, because there's so much traffic that is not just generated by Barrington. It's people going through to Concord. There's, it really, and that's a state road. That's the issue. But I hope, I think you all have the feeling you want to maintain a lot of that ruralness. And like Jeff said, the only way you're going to do that is to let some density be in that town center area. If you think about how many units you can put there, those aren't units that are spread out on 2-acre lots everywhere, creating, a less rural environment, So, some people are going to want to live in an area like that, and some aren't. It's a little bit of diversity in housing, I guess you'd want to call it.
Well, with respect to traffic in that particular area, if we did zero development in that area, that traffic is still going to be lined up. 125 has become a major north-south corridor. I don't know where all those people go, but you just sit there. Going through that intersection north-south, there's typically, at the times that I've commuted, there's typically not a big backup on Route 9. It's 125. And those people are headed north and headed south. They're not stopping in Barrington. So I'm not sure it would make a heck of a difference.
The envision process, that was before I had all my facts straight, all the research, all the reading I've done on, people have generalized concerns. Traffic has been a problem sometimes, but they didn't really have scientific facts until I did the digging. And we know from these different studies that we've read that's come before us, about 10 years is what we're looking at. Partly that's build out analyses, which, who knows exactly how long those things will happen, take to be developed. So, I think if people were to be asked the question with all the information in front of them, they would hesitate. They would have to think twice. It's a tough decision. It's a tough decision for us to try to deal with individual questions before us, and also remember to make these broader policy questions something we think about and wrestle with and have a plan on.
Hey, Jeff, this is Ron. I mean, to me, when I have to wait more than one traffic cycle, it seems to me it's Route 9 West in the afternoon.
Well, I haven't had to do that. When I was working, I was commuting on 4 rather than 9. But where are all those people going? You know, that are on 9? Are they coming into Barrington, or are they passing through?
No, strangely enough, according to the study, the afternoon commute is worse, and going west in the afternoon, you're going home. People are going home from work in Dover or Portsmouth or
Right.
south.
I drive to Dover at night to pick up my son from school and then come back up, and it's not uncommon to get stuck back by the middle school coming up through there.
Yeah, that's a pinch point that lasts for about, I don't know, not even, probably 50
15
minutes.
minutes, yeah. If you
But it's
and how you time it.
Yeah, it is.
but it's not going to get better. Is the point? It's
Right.
I don't think there's other scenario it gets better, right?
Well, and it works, you know, I mean, to some people they think, oh my God, there's no traffic here at all. And then another one has the same perspective of, oh my goodness, are you kidding? I have to wait this long. I mean, it's all in what you get used to and different.
Right,
But I would rather chance it trying.
That's just what you got, the tolerances.
I would rather chance it waiting in the line potentially on 9 than turning and cutting over to Province Road and trying to make a left-hand turn onto 125 off of Province, because you're taking your life into your hands when you do that.
Well, 125 is the designated trucking route. I mean,
Yeah.
regional planning has it listed as a trucking route. I mean, it's not like they're encouraging traffic to slow down there.
No, but I guess that's my greater point. We went through the whole process of a town center and said, let's plop and I say we collectively, we sold a walkable community on a trucking route. That's my whole point. It is, and you say it's, you know, oh, you got to get used to it. I think if we would have sold a bill of goods that said you're going to have to get used to it, nobody would have voted for the town center there.
But
Nobody.
I don't think that's true. And all you're doing is moving the problem somewhere else in the town. I would rather that we have the concentration of business and people, you know, higher density population down on a route and where there's already a lot of traffic, already a lot of businesses, than having it somewhere else in the town, which is going to extend the problem. If you were to take it up to Ramsdale Lane and then you develop that particular area, 125/9 is still going to exist. And now you're kind of going to
I think that's my point. You want that to exist as a highway, because then you have close access to a highway to commute, and then you have a town center just off the beating path. I mean, if Dover didn't have 16 so close to downtown, you have the downtown, and then you jump on the highway to shoot back and forth. If, you know, you just to bottleneck a state highway that's a designated trucking route seems so counterproductive to me. And it takes away from one of the appeals of having a business. Like, you know, I use my cousin, for example. They built a warehouse in Somersworth that's 12 miles off the highway. The extra trucking cost, it was such a bad decision that he was against, but they built down in the backside of Somersworth in the business park because it was cheap. But now to get to the highway to go to Boston or Rhode Island or Connecticut is a poor proposition. And, you know, why would you want to do that? You want to be close to that access point for business. But I mean, I don't know as though we're changing it, so I'm just barking up the tree. But I think that's what I think. I think it was a bill of goods wasn't sold appropriately. Yes, people want that walkability just off, you know, and they still want their highway to get out.
I think the challenge you run into with it there is theoretically it's a great spot for a community center, but you know, it's like putting the Great Wall of China between, or creating like a Berlin, an east and a west, and the highway is the wall. You've got it's an obstruction that makes it it's not something you're easily going to cross. And I can tell you as a person who runs out of TurboCam in the springtime, like the running joke is how many people are we going to lose crossing 125 one day? Like, is we herd up to cross over the highway, but
As I judge you for running on the highway.
yeah, right. You're like for these
engineering solution for everything, and right now we don't have that engineering solution, for
No,
these.
but other communities, Portsmouth and others, the way they dealt with this is a pedestrian bridge.
if we just get Elon Musk here with the boring project, we could solve all this. That's what I keep saying.
Yeah, you can put in your fast lane, Andy. We'll get you in to put in the fast lane.
Be awesome.
Well, maybe the town center should have been west of 125, not on both sides.
Right.
And that's all I'm saying. So is there, and so I think that's the discussion that brings us here, whether it was larger lot sizes outside of town center, as opposed to all the same, virtually all the same, even though uses are slightly different, but lot sizes are virtually all the same throughout the town. What can we do? What can we do regulation wise to control anything? Because I have a reoccurring feeling that we don't have regulation in place to control anything. We've made up regulation that's pretty good. I'm not, faulting it, but is it controlling, steering things the way we want them to be steered, or are we just along for the ride? And I feel like we're just along for the ride.
I don't feel that way. I mean, it all starts with the zoning ordinance. I mean, you look at it, it's not just, it has lot sizes, but it also extensively has uses. What you can do in a residential area, what you can do in town center, what you can do, in the village district, in commercial districts. So it's not just a matter of lot size. I think that, lot size is actually probably the second tier at controlling things. It's what are the permissible uses that we are listed in the zoning ordinance as to what you can do with a particular piece of property. That's the control. I mean, you got that entire list of what's permitted and what's not in the various different zones. That's the real control.
Yeah. Andy?
So the piece that stands out to me, and I'll kind of tie back to where I agree with Jamie, is that is that if you look at our lot sizes and you talk about rural density, I wouldn't necessarily agree that they're adequate as you move out into the more rural areas of town. And probably the best example I can use on that is there has been a fair amount of squealing lately about people shooting on their property. And their lot is appropriate and adequate, and they're able to shoot from their neighbor, but because their neighbor is close enough to them, but their lots are large enough to create an appropriate division for them to shoot, it's creating friction and tension with neighbors, which creates work for the town. Where if you move to a larger lot size, which gives people more room, I think you're going to actually have a better ability to allow people to use their property for what they want, be it hunting, shooting, whatever, and also give them space to solve some of that.
I thought about that, and I don't agree with you. And the reason, the example that I was thinking of is, so, first of all, you're talking about what's disturbing people is the noise of people shooting next door. And it doesn't really depend on the lot size. You could have 100 acres, but if you walk out and you're firing a gun 100 feet behind your house, which happens to be 150 to 200 feet from your neighbors, it doesn't matter you own 100 acres. Lot size has nothing to do with it. It has to do with how are they exercising their rights on that particular property. Changing lot size won't fix that situation. That's where my problem is with using lot size to control activities. If those activities are such that they're, a problem for other people, then we ought to attack the problem and fix the problem. And that's not necessarily increasing lot size.
Well, maybe not. I think that the problem is, from, I think, what Andy says and how I feel as well, is discouraging urbanization and sprawl. And I think Andy would see lot size as one mechanism to do that. And I know, it makes Marcia's eyes light up because she's a town planner, but
Like, sprawl is creating bigger lots. That's what sprawl is. Sprawl. It's like using up as much land and not keeping stuff. If you want to protect the rural, you got to have a place where you can put them tight together, and then make sure you have enough.
You don't have, I think that's the misnomer. You don't have to have a place to put them tight together. You don't have to have that at all. You can just have nothing in big lots in rural town. I mean, you don't have to.
You take everyone's equity, take their savings, take any of their.
I don't think that's the role.
But I don't think
board
that's
to decide.
I don't think that is an accurate representation either of what happens, because when you limit the amount of land and you do a good job actually controlling your tax base, and here's a perfect example. If you keep Barrington more rural, you actually don't need to expand more and more of the services. Plus, your schools don't continue to need to grow to accommodate all of that, even though New Hampshire schools as a whole are not overly growing. But you look at Barrington, where you've got all these people moving in. Well, guess what? We need more fire trucks. We need more police officers. Our transfer station needs more. Our highway department needs more. Our town hall needs to be able to provide more services. And all of that becomes a cost, whether it's a manpower cost, and I use manpower as just the term for it. I'm not trying. Tracy would be like crucifying me right now.
Person power.
Person power, a human factor power in there, and an equipment factor, where if you have a larger size and you limit the use of it, once you have used up that based on a density, it ultimately, and you control your cost, it still drives people to your town because they want to be here, which is actually part of what Barrington is seeing already, with the fact that we have a lower tax rate than all of our surrounding communities, which I just speak for as to the work that the department heads, the town administrator, the select board do to make sure that we don't have overburdened taxes for everyone. And also it ties into some of what Steve drives for, where it encourages people who want to move out here, who want to have their own small farms, and they want to, like, whether they want to raise chickens, goats, grow larger gardens. It gives them the opportunity to have enough land to be self-sustaining.
They already have that opportunity.
They do, but it's hard to buy it if it's being dismantled into smaller lots.
If you've got the 6 acres next to a 30-lot subdivision.
We haven't really had, if you look at where we've developed over the last few years, like even the one where the town hall's going, that is right. It's in a corridor. It's not like in the middle of the town, which would I would think you would find more concerning if we were chopping up the inner parts of the town. We haven't seen that kind of development. It may be right in your face right now because what we've seen is so close to the main roads, but it is providing for all that ruralness, and we're talking about thousands of acres of conservation land. Yeah. We haven't had any huge developments that have gone in recently around outside the town center. You can see that. We haven't even created that many lots in Barrington, for God's sakes. The only ones we have this conditionally approved one. I think we had like 5 and we had 6 and we just.
I think what some of us say, and besides me and Andy and Steve to a point with a lot of things, but maybe not all of it, and many of other town people, there's nothing that says that we have to have development. We have to provide housing stock. I know other people say that about us, and we should provide our fair share of housing stock, but there's nothing that says that we should and have to. You know, that's a discussion to have. There's some people that want it, some people that don't. So I think it's fair on both sides to say that, yeah, we've had a public forum on the town center and development in that area, but outside of that area, to say that we should probably and restrict development in that area. And if it invades on some people's, as you keep bringing up, you know, financial rights, as much as I'm concerned, I'm with Andy. It's like Bitcoin. The less there is, the more valuable it is.
Right.
There's an argument for both sides of that. You know, if you divide it up, you can sell it and your stock splits. You know, I get that too, but
I'm
it's
all
our
for
town.
Don't get me wrong. You have to be careful from a legal standpoint when you start talking about basically doing a taking, as they talk about, in large lots in certain areas. I think it's a wonderful idea, but when you go through this process, you always have to think about there are legal ramifications for what you try and do, and
Sure.
a take.
Different lawyer. Let's have the lawyer tell us that.
Right. That's the whole point of having a lawyer conversation.
Ron, sorry.
Yeah.
Ron, you get your
quick
hand up.
question. That's really more for, I think, Andy than anybody else. Andy, does TurboCam have any problem hiring people because of housing problems? Is that an issue that employees thinking about coming to TurboCam bring up, affordable housing?
Yes and no. Probably one of our bigger challenges. TurboCam is viewed as a training ground for people. People come to TurboCam, get experience, and then leave for other places that compensated at probably a greater rate than TurboCam. And some of it is there are areas where it makes sense for TurboCam to pay more, and they do. And then there are areas where it just doesn't. So there's a business decision that's made there.
Yeah, but it's a question. Can you not get employees because of lack of affordable housing?
No, I don't think it's an affordable housing issue. I mean, people definitely come from different areas. We have people that drive in from Maine. We have people that come from over toward Concord, up above Alton, Wakefield, Rochester, Dover, Portsmouth. It all depends on who the person is, the position they have, and what they're doing. It's more finding the right fit for the organization, I think, and sometimes that takes a while.
Well, I guess I'm kind of a little bit on Marcia's side. I mean, I think 80,000 square feet is a lot. My counter suggestion would be, if the houses that are going in don't have the right character, maybe there's other things we can do, like increasing the front setback, where the houses are back from the road a little bit, and maybe have a requirement where they can't take the trees down bordering the road, or things like that. Because everybody, when they buy a 2-acre lot, they put the house up all the way to the front because they don't want to put the driveway in. And if that's not the look we're doing, I think we can tackle that without increasing the acreage requirement.
The piece that I run into is a person who moved here. Well, I'll say I moved here for the rural character, although I live on a postage stamp lot because I live on the water. But all that being said, I would absolutely love to have more land, and it's not out of the realm of something that I'm looking for. If at some point I could find a larger chunk of land that was affordable and reasonable.
Yeah, but you went on a small lot. I came here on a small lot.
Right.
I came to Barrington, it wasn't. I didn't come here because of rural character. I came for the the property that I looked at.
Right, you came for the water, which is the same reason I purchased the house I did. But thinking about that, like I'm a country guy.
My point, though, Andy, is I didn't come to Barrington because I wanted to be in Barrington. You know what I mean? I wanted a house in a decent community, and Barrington is on the list of a number of towns I would have been interested in. So it wasn't like anything magical about Barrington. I didn't find the magic until later.
But Andy, this goes to this goes to people making choices. if people, you made a choice that you're willing to accept a small postage stamp lot. Other people, if they want to start a small farm, then they're going to go look for 10 acres worth of land and they're going to buy that. It shouldn't be that we're driving it. I do agree with Jamie that we're not under an obligation to build affordable housing. I don't see that as an obligation of either the town or the boards. But at the same time, what's reasonable? And another question I have, though, is, I mean, we keep talking about, oh my God, they could develop all these houses. Well, the last I remember, between wetlands and conservation lands, I mean, Barrington is something between 50 and 60% of the land isn't developable to begin with. I mean, even at 2 acres, we're going to run out of lots eventually because there just isn't that much land available.
No, well, yes and no. So to some degree, when you look at it, there's a fair amount of land that people have in current use, but they can pull that land out of current use and go develop it. And as generations change and people lose it, you will likely see that happen because it will become advantageous to do that. Or there's 3 family members and it's like they all want to get their piece of the pie. So the way to do it is to sell it to a developer and do something like that. So right now, the development that we're talking about is around these corridors, but there will come a point where it's not. And some of that 50 or 60% that you talk about that is in conservation is only in conservation by the fact that some of it is in current use as well. That counts current use lands.
As I hear it, though, what you and Jamie are essentially saying is we want to go have a limit on the population of the town of Barrington. And if that's the case, that's something that needs to go before the voters. That's not,
yes, I agree.
I think the voters can deal with that. I think that's why you're on the fringe of wanting, you've got to be careful how you talk about things or propose things, in the sense that from that legal standpoint, you can create 5-acre lots if you want, or, you should analyze. I think you've never done this, but think about it, is when you start looking at your different sections of town in quadrants, then you can actually see what's going on in them. Some of them may have tons of wetlands and you can only get 1 buildable lot on 10 acres, or, it's Barrington's a tough nugget. There's a lot of wetlands, there's a lot of, the topography's tough. It actually protects the character all by itself because it's such a difficult, it's really is a pretty difficult area to develop. There's not too many, that's why 125, does get its development, because it's fairly easy to. But even when we're trying to look at the town center, and we got a ZBA case coming up, okay, right at the core of town center where Caleb's is and everything, that's developable. You go over a couple of lots and the topography gets very steep. You have hills that you don't realize are there. It's protecting nature all by itself, protecting that rural character. You're never going to get those little square lots all over the place. You're just not.
Yeah, I think, Masha, I think you're right. I mean, wetlands everywhere. And I also think, getting back to your issue, Andy, 3 acres is not going to stop anybody complaining about, using it down in the backyard. There's, because if you put the acreage, the house will be on the front, and the backyard will be, not all the way back to the property, and that's where they're going to fire their gun. And I don't think it'll solve that. And I think Masha's right. I mean, you put me down anywhere in Barrington, a solid 7-iron, I'm going to hit wetlands.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to be, when I look at it and I look at how it goes, I try to follow I guess Stephen Covey's mindset of begin with the end in mind. What do you want your community to be? Because good planning is what makes your community what you want it to be. So what do you want Barrington to be? And then how do you go put that in front of the voters and see if they buy in? Because you need 60%. So you got to get a 2/3 majority to say, yeah, we agree. This is what we want. We want Barrington to have this rural character in all the outer areas. And we want like a great little urban center as you come down Route 9 toward 125 in that area right there. And I think if you talk to most people, that's exactly what they would tell you.
Yeah, but I think too,
I think that's
you've said it before, Randy, what people say and what they're willing to pay for are two different things. And when I got the survey on, what I thought was great about Barrington, it wasn't like I say, oh yeah, the rural character. I had to pick something. I said, yeah, I guess rural character, I mean, it wasn't like it was a important thing to me, but it was certainly on the list, but it wasn't like, that was if we didn't have rural character, I'd leave Barrington. I mean, it's not that kind of issue for me.
I'd like to appreciate Andy's earlier comment about size of lots potentially reducing conflicts. I think there's an element of truth to that, at least, although probably our zoning ordinance has some flaws when it comes to the way the noise ordinance is structured. If it's true that, it probably is true, depending on how you interpret it, that high caliber target shooting on 2-acre lots is maybe acceptable, depending on how you look at it. It's not appropriate. It's definitely not appropriate. And if sometimes a firearm discharges here and there, that's one thing. But if it's a relentless situation, that's a nuisance, and that is not something we should be allowing.
It's interesting because I actually had a gentleman call because he was trying to use his guns or whatever, and this was off of kind of in the Toll End Road intersect area, whatever. And Major Waldron's has hundreds and hundreds of acres out there. That does not stop the noise of the guns. And this gentleman actually said he was trying to help. He wanted me to help him figure out whether he was in Dover or was he in Barrington or Madbury or whatever, because the noise, it just travels so far on those with those guns. So I don't know. I don't know what
that's the right place
is.
for it to be doing. Ideally, everyone would use it there. Be perfect, because at least it's in one spot.
We have
really it comes down.
We have both.
It really comes to,
15 years ago, I encourage target practice in my backyard. I don't anymore. I just, as Steve said, I don't think it's appropriate anymore.
Yeah. I think it is. I mean, if you have a suitable backstop and you're 300 feet from an occupied dwelling, you're perfectly within your rights and regulations to enjoy a civil liberty that should not be infringed upon. I encourage you to go down and use the services of businesses in town, because I'd love to see the businesses get business. That's how they survive as well. But no more than I would stop the people picketing at the corner, because that's a nuisance. Would I stop someone from shooting their guns in an appropriate manner, which is established by that 300 feet from an occupied dwelling and a suitable backstop? If your bullet's flying into someone else's window, yes, we've got a problem. But noise isn't the issue. Noise is a nuisance, but it's not an issue. I can't stand that dog I hear incessantly, but it's his right to have that darn dog and leave it chained up outside. And, it's frustrating at times, but it's a right that shall not be infringed in my, because that's the right that protects all the others, really. And, you start there and you chip away at the rest. It's very plain and simple for me, but that's how I view it anyways.
It's funny. I think there's a lot of consensus, about what we're talking about, and we view things sometimes in different ways. And I kind of laugh because I know I'm from Dover. Everyone thinks Dover's so developed. I literally step out my door into, like a 5-minute walk around the corner. I'm in 600 acres of open land all along the river, and it's just, and I sometimes even think that my neighbors who walk on the other side of the road don't even realize all that acreage is there, it just, anyways, but I laugh.
And there's
what?
I said, you city slickers.
I mean, I'm the one with the horses in the back. Well, I don't have horses in the backyard anymore, but I'm the one who had the horses in the backyard. So, yeah.
Well, I think we're not getting anywhere. Do we have any questions to ask the lawyer?
Well, I think we've
I
actually
do enjoy
touched
this.
I think we've touched on a good point, and it's around the land use end of it, and how do we how do we set this up so that we don't create a situation, or maybe how do we best manage the situation around the lawsuit that may or may not come based on land use and development.
Your first thing you need to do is, and this was the next chapter of your master plan coming up, is the one for future land use. So this is the one we need to fund through our budget. We didn't fund it for this time with the whole COVID thing, but I think that's critical. That's a big chapter. That's really kind of the nut of the whole thing. Very important. So we work with regional planning or another organization, but regional planning has been done fairly well, to come up with an actual future land use chapter, and then get a lot of public input and a lot of discussions. And last time when we did the envisioning stuff, we enlisted the services of UNH. That was helpful too. So, I think there's a lot of options out there, but, people are, we're talking, we're going to see more development. We've had a bunch of stuff approved. We haven't built a whole heck of a lot. And I think it's going to be a lot when it all starts getting built. It's like shock factor, it really is. It's like,
I think
And then it's too late.
Right, but you're going to see people come out of the woodwork at that point.
Well,
Well, this is probably for Andy and Jamie. I know that there's concerns about, the high density developments that we're putting in, the row house type, but have there been 2-acre single family developments that you think are not good, that you have a problem with?
I don't know if I would say not good. What I see happening is you have someone who comes in who has a different vision of the use of their property, and they have the right to use their property that way, but because of the density, it makes it difficult to do that. They think they're buying in rural character or in a rural area that allows them to do what they can do, and by right they can. But what happens is it, like I said, it ruins the neighborly aspect of it. It creates an uproar,
Animosity.
right? Which defeats community as a whole, especially if people are moving here for the rural aspect of it.
We have people complain about animals. I couldn't believe when I came, in Barrington, and how many people complained about animals. Oh my goodness. I was like, they didn't want horses. They didn't want, I don't know so much as cows. We did have cows running loose, but there was a lot of people, chickens, everything else, people complaining about how could they have those? And I'm thinking, are we in Barrington?
Well, and I think this is the conundrum. We talk about, Ron, you asked the question, what development is bad? And it's not necessarily that the development's bad, but what it does is it brings, and I hate to use this term, but it brings people that aren't interested in, I was going to say outsiders, but it brings people like you stated, that aren't interested in rural character and just want a place to live. And then they experience rural character and they're like, yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to complain. I don't want the chickens and the horses, snowmobile cutting through my yard. So when you build that stacked development like Village Place or the one up on the hill, and all of a sudden 13 snowmobiles come through your yard at 2 a.m, you're upset about it. And it ruins community and creates animosity when those snowmobiles have been cutting through that piece of property for 25 years. And
Right.
that's the character that I like about this town. That's the character that I came here for, because I remember when I used to be able to ride my snowmobile up 6th Street in Dover and get chased by the cops, but it wasn't a big deal. Now you can't do that.
That's just alarm.
You know,
I put
after
that
the,
piece.
yeah, after the storm, after the storm, you'd run the streets in downtown Dover. You can't do that anymore. You got to come up here and do it. So we're losing the charm that people can't identify until it's gone. And so it's not that the developments are bad, but it slowly chips away at the things that people remember of being good. And as you're transplanted with people that never knew it in the first place, they don't care that it's gone. And then the people that are here are left to say, who approved that 23 house or that 80 house subdivision? You know, we had a share it about it and everybody agreed that it was a good idea. It's the conundrum we fight, you know? So that's why I say, I don't feel like we're in the driver's seat necessarily. And I guess
It's a slow erosion.
And we'd be okay. You know what? If each individual owned a ton of land, they could control it. Unfortunately, that's the hard part is, you know, we just.
Yeah. And that's why I always stand by the idea. I want property owners, Barrington residents, to be able to do whatever they want. I don't want developers to do whatever they want. And I know that's a very blurry line because the property owner, the resident, sells it to that developer. But that's what I want to kind of discourage a little bit. I want to see that they enjoy their land and if they can make some money, but I don't want it to be the bank account for, you know, developers to come here and say Barrington's great, is a moneymaker. Let's just develop it like crazy.
I don't think that's been happening though. I mean, if you look at the last couple of years, I think last year, outside of the projects that are along, you know, 125 in town center, I think there were 4 house lots created for last year, the entire year. I mean, it's not, and the year before, it's been in single digits as I think as long as I've been on the board. That's just not something that's happening.
I think we're starting to see more and more of it though, because as you use up that 125 Route 9 corridor, they're gonna start. Your developers will start moving out into the outer area, and isn't there a project in the works on that? What was originally going to be the gravel pit off like Green Hill Road or something? There's a big housing development looking at for there.
Honestly, I have heard so many different things, and he's thrown so many things out, even conservation. I mean, in a mixture of that, this has been years now. They've been going back and forth. So what Mr. Huzzy ends up doing will remain to be seen. But for the most part, we haven't had, now that would be an available area probably, but it's on the river, so there'd be constraints there too. But like Jeff said, we just haven't seen, and that's not developed. We haven't seen it outside. We had the extension of, what was that? The one out on the, I want to say the west side.
I mean, the other big piece that I look at that with that, and this kind of goes to what you're saying, Marcia, and also aligns with some of what Jamie and Steve are talking about, is that, and this is my thought on the larger lot sizes, it still encourages and promotes people to do conservation subdivisions. It just means you're not going to put as many units in there and you're going to conserve more land. So it actually accomplishes more of it.
Yeah, so no bonus on our conservation subdivisions. That was one of the things I said. Why are you giving them extra lots, for God's sakes? You know.
Right. That's why I actually promote the idea of a larger lot out in that area, because it'll encourage the conservation of more land.
But Ron, you want to jump in here? You get your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, I hear what you say, Jamie, about properties that are no longer available for recreational activities and stuff. And one thing, maybe it's for Andy more than anybody, but back in the years ago, I was on the Conservation Commission, and they acquire lands, and I made a suggestion that they should be willing to sell properties to acquire other properties. In other words, to get contiguous properties and higher value properties, they should be willing to sell properties in order to acquire other properties. At the time, they were completely against that. Whenever they acquire a property, they didn't want to get rid of it. And a friend of mine worked for Ducks Unlimited, and they do that all the time. They will take property, and then they will sell it or trade it for property that has more value for them for conservation purposes. And I think that can accomplish a lot, but it's got to be a change in philosophy for the Conservation Commission.
Oh, the transfer of development rights.
Yeah, I think the only thing I know about that is that some of when they convey those rights to the conservation, sometimes it's in there that you can't do anything with it, so they're kind of
I agree with
hamstrung,
that,
but
but, when Ducks Unlimited takes
Ones
a
that
property, they
can.
put in there that they will in fact have the right, and people can say, no, I won't do it on this.
Right.
They say, we have the right to transfer that property, sell that property, and acquire higher value land that has higher conservation, you may get
Value,
along
yeah.
with great development potential, but it's not so good for conservation. It's isolated, it doesn't really do much.
Right.
You can attach it, you can go contiguous properties or along, like you say, snowmobile trails or whatever, recreational trails, it's worth more.
Yeah. Yeah, because even if we could have an exchange program, because say like the conservation part of the town hall one, if you could trade that piece of conservation land out back, if that was a better development site to give for a higher value site, and then put more houses in a dense zone, and then trade the land off of somewhere else. I don't know. It seems like makes sense, but I don't know how the
Yeah,
details of that.
Just doing that with they call it transfer of development rights. I mean, my opinion is still a little here and there depending on what the value of the property is. But in their case, I believe they've actually sold some density and stuff too. They've collected, I guess, a pretty big chunk of money now for their conservation fund to do, believe it or not, there's still land left to be conserved in Dover, to do some more conservation projects. And they did that by allowing more density in some of their other areas. So.
Yeah.
But here, Marcia, we acquire property, but we never sell it. And that to me is a flawed philosophy.
Well, the conservation model has some merit, but really more restorative practices are what I've been reading about lately. And sometimes that involves cutting things down. Sometimes it involves some intervention if we can be smart about it. I guess we don't always trust ourselves to be smart about it and how we approach restoring. It takes 1,000 years to make an old growth forest if you just stand back and do nothing. But you can get there faster if you know what you're doing a little bit at least.
Proper management is really the key to most things, I guess. All right. Are we ready to conclude? Do we have more? Do we have any specifics that we want to pass along, or any suggested zoning changes that we want to discuss?
Well, I'll say again, I want the parking one changed.
That's not zoning. Parking? I'm not sure. Did you say parking?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
wants to
parking
amend the
requirements, the
parking
state
regulations.
Every time we
Oh,
talk about changes, I bring that up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's within our control. That's not a zoning change.
Yeah. But I really think doing a master plan chapter on future land uses should be the priority for the next one.
What I have heard somewhat agreement on here is the general premise of the town center not necessarily being quite so totally focused on Caleb's Corner, maybe moving more towards 9, more west on 9.
I think, Steve, when we have that 12-acre piece that's still undeveloped, is actually in current use, is right dead in right to the side there of the town center, and it's flat. That's where they used to ball field or whatever, and have the antique car show and everything. And that owner actually, I mean, he calls me about every 6 months. Oh, what's going on? Because they need, believe it or not, they need traffic. They need, busy. They need whatever is what he hears. But that's still out there. That's a big chunk of land, in the town center that's level. So, I mean, and that would be not like right on 125. That would be out behind. So that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of not being in the driver's seat and not making a good decision. I mean, we let that piece go, and now it sits there. I mean, they don't let the car show there anymore. The new owner doesn't, last year or whatever, and it was a missed opportunity to create the town center that we talk about. And I know things cost money, and that's a difficult thing as well, but you know,
It
who knows,
redeveloped.
who knows, we're gonna get there, you know?
Hopefully
know.
something good. I mean, the people that own it actually are, we'll see. We'll see.
Because we do define, or there is a process where we could define, what development we want in each zone and where each zone is. So we could make adjustments to that.
That's what you've done already. You have zones and uses, right?
I mean, we could continue to make some adjustments to that, is my point.
Right, and I think that's the point. If there's some tweaks we can make, I think we should. I'm not 100% clear on what they are.
Well, I do find this, I believe this was useful in defining what some of the issues are and hammering out, the details on how we each feel about it. So I thought this was useful.
Yeah, I always like these. I like a good discussion. So, all right. If there's nothing else, are we ready to conclude? Next meeting is, way to go, March 2nd.
I gotta hop off, guys. I got a call that I gotta take.
All right, we'll see you
All right.
March 2nd.
Yep.
Great.
Do we need to do a roll call?
We will, we'll let him go, and
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion. Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Ron Allard,
Alan, but I want to say too, I think this was a great discussion as well. I agree with that.
thank you. James Jennison, Jeff Brand.
Aye.
Thank you all very much for your participation. See you in a couple weeks.
Hey, Marcia, did you say that the Berry project off Community Way, that's a design review?
Yeah, it's design review.
Okay.
So,
All right.
some discussion.
Yep.
I'm
Thanks.
actually meeting with him tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Technical review committee, staff review. Okay.
All right.
All right. Shut this off.
Everyone's gone. Just you and me.
Just you and me. What? Let me close out. Shut you off.